For what Democrats hope to hear from the president tonight, we turn to the House Majority Leader, Steny Hoyer. Mr. Leader, thanks for being here. What do you expect to hear? What do you hope to hear?
Well, I expect to hear a speech that's going to talk about greatness, apparently. But talking about greatness and reaching greatness are two different things. And cooperation is necessary to accomplish that objective. And we haven't seen that the last 2 years, very frankly, Brett. But the president apparently is reportedly going to speak about working cooperatively towards a better America. But what we've seen over the last 2 years is a president that has led on a very deep tax cut that was for the very wealthy in America, not for the average working person in America. We've seen a policy of trade that he said was going to bring a lot of jobs back to America. We've seen that not happen. We've seen a shutdown of government, which ironically, Ms. Sanders just said that they didn't want that. But in fact, the president said, I'm going to take responsibility. I welcome it. And he said a good shutdown might be good for America. It was bad for America. It cost $11 billion at least in GDP loss. Right. So that I hope to hear a speech that says we can work together and we will work together. But very frankly, the speech is not important. What is important is the performance, the deeds, the actions, the cooperation that occurs. As you know, we've been trying to work on the DACA protections for people who were given protections, young people who came here as infants or small children, and we have not been able to do that. And the president said, Brett, when we were down at the White House, you send us a bill or send me a bill and I'll sign it and I'll take the heat. Well, the next day he said, no, that's not what I'm going to do. Right.
Well, let's talk about border security and your thought process on the conference committee. The last time you appeared here, and we appreciate you coming on every time, you said this about the wall. Take a listen.
Look, I don't think this is an issue of morality. It's an issue of does it work?
Would you remove those existing barriers because you say they don't work?
No.
So they work there?
Obviously, they work some places.
So walls work some places. What is the compromise? You said it was possible last time. Is it possible now with this conference committee of lawmakers trying to get a deal?
Well, you've got 17 people from the Senate and the House sitting down together and trying to reach agreement. We think basically on the 6 bills that are covered by the conference, there's 7 bills in all, 6 we think we have relative agreement. We will see what the conference can agree on with respect to how best to accomplish border security, and that's really the issue. A lot of experts, a lot of Republican senators, as I said last time, Brett, I think, have indicated the wall is not the answer. We think that technological listening devices, heat-seeking devices, X-ray equipment, so you know what's coming into the country in trucks or vehicles or on backpacks. We think that technology, personnel, humanitarian treatment of people who are at the borders, we think all of those are worthy of investment.
What about barrier enhancements, fencing enhancements? That's not on your list.
Brett, I think that's going to be on the table, and I think the conferees will have to come to agreement on that, and I think they will.
Okay. You know, part of the State of the Union nowadays is to tell a story through some of the guests who are there. Some of the guests who are here for the president this time deal with families who lost loved ones because of someone illegal across the border. Take a listen to Doug LaMalfa.
The murder of an illegal immigrant from El Salvador who had been living in Carson City for over a year. No motive has been released, but then does the motive really matter to this family, to yet another loss of life due to illegal immigration and the sieve we have of a border in this country?
So what do you say to those lawmakers? What do you say to those families, especially the one appearing tonight, who are really concerned about this?
Well, obviously anybody who loses a loved one is concerned. And whether it's an immigrant who's not legally in the United States or it's somebody else, it's a neighbor, or it's most of the murders, obviously, we've seen, particularly the multiple murders, have been committed by our citizens, by neighbors, by people who are in our communities. I think it is, frankly, Brett, demagoguery to make it appear as the president has done over and over and over, that the crime in America is because of immigration. That is not the case. Do some immigrants commit crimes? Certainly.
But you concede there's a problem at the border, right?
There's a challenge at the border. The president says there's a crisis at the border, and his national security advisor, the director of national intelligence, didn't list that on any of the areas where he said we had a national security challenge, so that he didn't agree that the president was right and then we have a crisis at the border. Yes, we need to make sure that illegal drugs don't come into America. We need to make sure that criminals don't come into America. We need to make sure, frankly, those who aren't authorized to do so don't come into America without us knowing it. But there is not a crisis at the border.
All right, but you think a compromise is possible?
I tell you, I certainly hope compromise is possible. I think it is possible. And we will see whether the president is prepared to compromise.
Okay, and we'll see tonight. I want to ask you about your neighboring state of Virginia. Obviously, the governor is under fire for these images in his yearbook in 1984. The lieutenant governor is now under fire for an allegation of sexual assault. Are you calling for Lieutenant Governor Fairfax to address this? What is your stance on this?
Fred, I think he is addressing it. He's denied it emphatically. Most of the news reports I've said that the allegation is not corroborated. That doesn't mean it ought not to be taken seriously. It ought to be, but I don't think it. I don't think he's not dealing with it. He is dealing with it and said he didn't do it.
Yeah. When Christine Blasey Ford was testifying about the Brett Kavanaugh case, you tweeted, "I'm proud of the House Democratic women walking to the Senate to stand in support of Dr. Ford this morning. Believe women." You said, "I believe Dr. Christine Blasey Ford. She's courageous. She's compelling. We owe it to her, to those who have been subjected to such pain and trauma, and to our country to fully investigate all the allegations. There should not be a vote before that happens." I mean, do you feel for this accuser? Do you believe her?
I don't know. I saw Dr. Ford testify. I thought she was very credible. I don't think there's any doubt that she absolutely believed what she said, and I believe what she said. They had a further investigation, and I think it was superficial, very frankly, and the Senate decided to confirm Judge Kavanaugh. But having said that, at this point in time, I don't think any of us can draw a conclusion other than the allegations are serious allegations, ought to be taken seriously, and ought to be gotten to the bottom of it.
And you have called for the governor to resign?
No, I have not called for the governor to resign. The governor needs to decide whether or not, given the serious incidents that he says he was involved in, and he says he wasn't one of the two people, but given that, he needs to very seriously think of whether or not he can have the confidence of the Commonwealth citizens of Virginia, and whether or not he can lead in an effective way. And I think he owes it to Virginia, and frankly he owes it to himself to make a decision that comports with whether or not he feels he can continue to enjoy the trust and faith of the citizens of the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Mr. Leader, we really appreciate your time tonight, and we'll be watching along with you as well.
Brett, thanks a lot.